Have you ever been halfway through an argument and realized you're wrong, but you can't go back on what you said because you're already in the team of defending yourself. And at that point, you just can't accept losing. So you continue on with this argument, even though you don't believe in what you're arguing. It's kind of like a principle. There is a moment where it's not even about the point you're making anymore. It's just about defending the position that you were in. Well, this is the exact same thing that happens in markets when people are trying to invest. So today I want to teach you a nice practical way of being able to change your mind without it feeling like you're contradicting yourself. And I think this is one of the most important skills you can have in the world of investing. And based on my experience and having worked with thousands of people at this point who invest, I know this to be one of the most important skills you can have in the market. And there's no judgment here, by the way, but if you ever feel like you get a little bit angry when somebody comes to you with an alternative explanation or a counter argument to what you believe about, a specific asset or any of your investing ideas, or you tell yourself that you're being patient and thinking long term just to save you the hassle of having to go and do the research yourself, or putting yourself in this weird position where you're trying to defend yourself, defend your previous opinion, even though you don't actually know how to back up your opinion with facts or anything. If that is you or has been you, this video is perfect for you. So let's think about why you would defend yourself in the first place in a position. And it's most likely because you believe that position at one time. If you think about that position and you think about the emotions attached to it, this is a really good indicator to see whether you've been kind of lulled into an emotional narrative and story, or whether it's one that's based mechanically and factually. And so in that world, the whole idea of changing your mind doesn't feel like, new information has come in and I'm making a logical decision. No, instead, it feels like you yourself are changing. And oftentimes, when you change away from these narratives and when you change away from these previous beliefs, you have to shed a version of yourself in exchange for this new version of yourself. And the reason people don't do that is because that feels like defeat. If you change and the people that previously kind of shared your view would no longer share your view, and then you're detached from that emotional connection. There's also an emotional connection that you have with yourself, that previous version of you. If you think about the time that you had at university, for me, university was like the most amazing experience. I loved every single second of it. And I kind of have this nostalgic emotional feeling about who I was then and the potential I had back then. And I latch onto that. And that's impacted my life as I've reflected on that previous version of me. But even if it is, there are elements of this where when we invested in an asset previously, where we've invested in this idea or we've got this thought process, you kind of look back on that and think there was a version of me that really believed in that. And so when you leave that version of you, it might be positive or negative, but there's an emotional attachment to it. So when it comes to changing your mind, you're also changing your mind. You are changing who you are, changing the belief systems that you operate under, big or small. And so we have this aversion to want to change anything for the negative. Most humans have a fear of failure. So changing your mind takes you from a comfortable place of being safe in this idea and then moving out of that, which is triggering an uncomfortability with your environment, right? You're changing your situation, you're becoming uncomfortable. And there's an emotional attachment to comfort as well. But I think the big thing here is that people stop trusting themselves. They start asking questions about, can I trust myself anymore? Am I just being inconsistent and irrational? Can other people trust me? And I think if you've ever been around people with lots of money, especially investors, it's not the lack of information that ruins people, because we all have infinite amounts of information. It's people's inability to let go of their ego. And look, these videos aren't supposed to be easy listening, by the way. I know it can feel annoying when somebody says you've probably got an ego, but we all have an ego. It's just a psychological element of who we are. But our inability to access change and counter that ego and do something that the ego is not comfortable with, it's the fear around that that stops people progressing. It's the same type of thing as when you look at Elon Musk or you look at any of these massively rich people. They share the same 24 hours as you and I do. But look at their level of productivity. They're doing something different. We all have the internet. We have access to infinite information. But the real difference is made up here. You have to do something different here to use that information in a different way. And if you want outsized returns or the ability to see opportunities where nobody else is, you have to do something different with the information that we all have. And I would suggest, based on my experience of what I've seen in myself and with people I've worked with and been exposed to, is that it all comes down to the ego. I mean, I'm even struggling with this right now myself about the fear of failure. I have this kind of ego that everything I need to do has to be top tier and amazing, and everyone has to give me approval for it. But that's my ego getting in the way, right? And it gives me this fear of failure. And so inaction becomes more likely than action. And right now I'm doing everything I can to not have that happen. But I'm speaking from the point of personal experience, right? I understand the pain. Now, I titled this video, How to Change Your Mind Without Losing Conviction. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to give you something actionable that you can actually apply into your life and make a whole world of difference. The big point I want to make is that there is a difference between conviction and attachment. I believe conviction to be, this is what I think right now based on the information I have. But attachment on the other side is something like this, where you would say, this is what I think no matter what. And if you want to know if you're convicted or attached to any of the assets that you have invested in, you can ask yourself this one simple question. Can you explain what would need to happen in order for you to change your mind on that position? If you can't answer that, you probably have an attachment. And the weird thing is, especially online, attachment can sometimes look like intelligence, but really it's just endless justification of your position without the required information. And I think this is what kills most people's investing, is that they think that updating their mind or changing their mind, updating their position, kills conviction. But it doesn't kill conviction, it actually kills attachment. Being able to update your view and change your mind is what protects your conviction. So let's go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to show you how to avoid that fundamental mistake. Step one, the thing that I always try to do, is to separate a signal from a story. Because if you've looked anywhere online and you've noticed patterns in the market, it's usually run by these stories that are being told. Their markets are usually run by narratives. This is why we call them speculative assets, because people are speculating. Why do people speculate? Because there's an emotional story or a narrative that puts them in an emotional position to speculate. The source of all of that comes from this inside emotion of greed. Greed comes out of a fear of lacking. Naturally, that comes from a position of not being happy and content with what you have. So instead of listening to the story machine that is the market, I'll ask myself, has anything actually changed informationally, mechanically, architecturally, from a legislation standpoint? Has anything actually changed, or have I been fed a story? Because if I've been fed a story and I want to take action, that means my emotions have been impacted, and that is obviously an emotional decision. So if you're feeling a change and you can't point to a mechanism, you are the subject of a story. The second thing I like to do is make sure that any changes I do make, I don't see them as flip-flops or reversals. I actually see them more as a calibration over time. And I think oftentimes we can be quite binary in our thought processes. I'm a very binary person, so this is a really difficult thing for me to get past. I'm either on or I'm off, or this is right and this is wrong, or that's good and that's bad. Much to my wife's frustration, that's kind of how my brain has been wired. I'm actively trying to move myself away from that. So instead, at all opportunity, I try to install these different levers that I can pull and dials that I can turn to adjust different elements that allow me not to be so binary and flip-flop, and instead turn the dial in terms of confidence or time frame. So I might say, okay, this thing has happened, this thing has changed, this alters the time frame of this investment, higher or lower, or it changes my confidence in this asset from high confidence to medium confidence. And so I'll dialify everything to make sure there is a sliding scale in every valid metric. And that just allows for a far more stable investing journey. And ultimately, when you are convicted about something and things change in a positive way, you can appropriately dial up your confidence on that investment, and you can start to allocate more to that investment, but you're only taking action based on things that have actually changed, not your response emotionally to any narratives or stories that have been thrown around. And the great thing about this is that neutral is a position too, and you are allowed to be inactive on an asset. You don't have to be in or out. You can kind of just be waiting to see. And that brings me into step 3, because if you are waiting to see, what are you waiting to see? You have to have a list of things you're waiting to see that would either strengthen or weaken what you believe is going to happen. Because if you can predetermine these conditions that would either strengthen your thesis or weaken your thesis, you're simply just waiting for those things to happen, and you can turn the dials appropriately. So I would ask these very simple 2 questions whenever you're looking at an investment. Well, you might say, what could happen that's not a story, not a narrative, not an emotional driven thing, but like an architectural, mechanical, legislatory thing that could happen that would strengthen my confidence on this investment? And then equally as important, what would weaken my argument for this investment? And actually write those things down. So write 3 things for the positive outcome, 3 things for the negative outcome, and simply track what happens over time. You know, if you've got all 3 of your validation signals ticked off and none of your invalidation signals checked off, then you've got yourself an investment that not only are you confident in, and you're convicted in, but you're convicted with the right information and the right signals, not based on stories or narratives. And if you allow yourself to put this filter on your investment decisions, you end up with only good decisions at the end of the day. And the great thing is you're not attached to any of them either. Anything could happen the next day that changes your view from strengthened to weakened. But all you do is turn the dial, reduce your allocation, and move on. If you don't know what would actually change your mind specifically, then you have an attachment to the asset, not proper conviction. And I think that's where most portfolios go wrong. People really treat their portfolio as part of their identity. Who they are is dependent on the assets they hold. You might be in that position now, and I'm not, like I said, there's no judgment here. I've been in that position too. I'm really on the other side of that now, having worked with people who actually have a load of money and see these high operating investors. They just don't operate like that. They're so agnostic to the asset. A serious portfolio, if you're a serious investor, is just a series of positions based on the information you have. And that can update and change with new information. So a quick note, because I know a lot of people in the comments are always asking, where are these assets? Which assets are you talking about? Which ones are you tracking? What are the different theses that you have? Well, the portfolio I have, based on the research behind it, can all be found on eToro. eToro saw the portfolio and saw my method behind my research and thought, hey, that would be a really cool thing to see if your audience might be interested in seeing on eToro. And they did just that, and it's really cool. So if you're in the UK, they're actually going to offer you up to $500 if you register an account and fund your account. And with that $500, you can get one of the assets that I have in my portfolio. It's like super cool promotion. If you're not in the UK, you won't get the promotion, but you can go to eToro and have a look at the portfolio on there. Remember, as always, your capital is at risk. This isn't financial advice. And thank you to eToro for supporting this channel. If you're going to take one thing from this, it's that updating your vision, changing your mind, isn't a form of losing. If you really want to lose, you should cling to something that you have no longer any information to justify that position. And frameworks and structures and conditions beat feelings and speculation and narratives every single day. And you'll know if you're a high-level investor or you work with high-level investors, this is absolutely true. These guys have systems and they don't operate on feelings. And I've actually written out the entire process for doing your research. I call it the macro method. Basically, it gives you a list of all the right questions to ask to make sure you're not attached to something, but you are in fact convicted. And if new information comes in, how do you manage that new information? What questions should you ask? This is kind of my secret sauce because this is what I use to deliver to clients, and I want to give it to you for free. I think everyone should be able to use this stuff. So if you're interested, you can go to lewisjacksonventures.com, go up to the top and click About. You'll see a page for the macro method. You can also click the macro method in the link in the description. It'll take you directly there. Get a cup of tea, get a coffee, print this thing out, sit down with it, highlight it, annotate it. But taking that information, because it's really good, right? If you want to make good decisions consistently over time, if you want to make a load of money from your good decisions, then this is a really important document in all of that. And like I said, it's absolutely free. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. If it has been helpful, share it with some people. I also would love to know what you have to say about this video and about this topic. So leave them in the comments. I read every single one. All right, pick up your copy of the macro method, absolutely free, using the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.